Hello, everyone, and welcome back to They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy. And my guest today is someone who I actually got to know a little bit shortly after opening the doors on law firm Alchemy. Connected with him through LinkedIn as he was starting to work more and more closely with lawyers and law firm owners in the financial planning world, and have gotten to learn from him a lot about sort of what is out there in the insurance space, what kind of things people can be looking into. Let's go ahead and disclaim up front. None of this is intended to be advice. You should consult with the professionals that you have in your life. Now that we've got the near mandatory disclaimer out of the way, Frank Rekas, a financial planner, great to have you on the show, Frank.
Well, thank you, Charlie. I'm really humbled to be a guest of yours, and it's been good getting to know you and getting to see all the great things that you're doing. But thank you very much for having me. I really, really appreciate it, and I've been looking forward to it.
Me too. So, all right, Frank, here's the question. What's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
Well, I think it's more than just one thing, but it probably encompasses the one thing. And what I believe it to be is the different aspects of running a law firm, especially as it relates to financial preparation and doing all the things that you have to do financially as a law firm owner and even as an attorney or an associate. I've never gone to law school. Yes, I did go to a Holiday Inn Express, as the joke goes. Yes, I watch all the attorney shows. You name it. I'm sure I've watched it. Suits
right.
is my favorite, but I know law is not like any of those shows. I get it. But
yeah,
I think the issue is that they're not teaching the different aspects of how to run your firm and the things that you need to watch out for, specifically from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're going to talk about this because you definitely are involved in an area that will be out of category for most. When it comes to like business, marketing, entrepreneurship podcasts, this idea, when I first heard you express some of the concepts that you work with people on, it goes deeper than just about protecting your future. It's about protecting your present. It's about really making sure that all the work that you're putting into building this incredible asset, your law firm, isn't secretly built on sand, right? That's a big issue when you have someone who's a high earner, like an attorney, much less a law firm owner. We have so many like different insurance things, different ways to invest money, this, that, or the other thing. But I remember you kind of explaining it, me going, oh, there's still a ton of risk that no one knows about. So I'm sort of curious, myself as relatively a layman here, and many of my listeners going to be a layman when it comes to all this. When you're sitting down with someone and looking at what they have, what are you interested in terms of that financial planning or that financial aspect of it that you just talked about?
Well, I think it boils down to, Charlie, where are they currently?
Right.
What have they done? And what are they looking to accomplish? And a big thing that I'm hearing now is, a question of, will I be okay? Well, what does will I be okay really mean? Well,
That's a good question.
Yeah. Will I have enough money to retire? Okay. What does retirement mean to you? Because in the old days, retirement was you retire at 65, you start collecting Social Security, and you're done with work. And I'm sure that you're seeing now people have different ideas about retirement. It may not be full retirement, and probably in many cases, it's not full retirement. Like myself, as a financial planner, or people that are law firm owners, or even someone like you who have independent businesses, we don't have to retire. We can slow down, we can keep working, we can turn it up, we can turn it down. I mean, I know an attorney locally, and I'll name one, who claimed that they were going to retire. They're not retiring, but they're picking and choosing cases that they want and then not taking the ones that they don't want. So it's really trying to find out, what does the future hold for you? How long are you going to plan on working? And then what have you done? And then what does it look like as we try to, move forward?
So a lot of times I can imagine you receive sort of shallow answers to some of those questions at first. Not shallow in like the person is shallow, although maybe that's the case. Maybe the person is shallow. Who am I to judge? But I'm sure that you get a lot of surface level questions to that. So when you're doing this process of, what does retirement look like? How are you getting past that first layer with them?
I think it's really just trying to be a good listener and ask really good questions. So it could be, when you retire, Charlie, what are your plans? What do you want to do? And you may answer back, well, I want to travel more. Okay, how often would you like to travel? Well,
Mm.
3 or 4 times a year. And where would you like to go? Well, I'd like to go to Portugal. I'd like to go to Greece. Geez, I've never been to Canada. I'd like to do a ski trip once a year with my buddies from college.
Hmm.
Okay, that's part of it, right? What else do you want to do? And it's just continually trying to dig deep. And ultimately, if we ask really good questions, which is something they don't always teach in financial advisor planning school,
Yeah.
um, if you ask really good questions, you can get to pretty much where somebody wants to go. And I mean, I think I'm pretty easy to talk to, at least I hope so. And by asking the right questions and listening, people open up. And what we want to do is we want to get to the emotional side of it. And if we
Mm.
can get someone to talk emotionally about what it is that they're looking for and what they want to accomplish, it's so much easier to work with them.
So that emotional side, have you ever had any sort of emotional breakthrough moments for someone that you've been talking with where it was almost like a therapy session?
Are you asking, like, did somebody start to cry?
Pretty
Or,
much, yeah.
well, so I guess we can say two things.
Yeah.
A very good client, not an attorney, but business owner. And he said to us a few years ago when we first started working with him, he says, guys, meaning me and my business partner, it's time for me to grow up. And we just all kind of sat and paused and,
Hmm.
okay, so tell me, what does that mean? Well, I'm all disorganized. I haven't done what I'm supposed to do. I need to get my life in order personally, professionally, and financially. And I want your help to do it. Okay. Been one of our best clients for many, many years. Um, the other side of that, I mean, that was sort of emotional.
Yeah.
The other side of it is in working with sometimes a divorcee or someone who's been through or is going through the divorce process, the
Yeah.
emotions will come out. You know, my spouse took care of everything. I don't know what I'm doing. How am I going to survive? How am I going to get through all this? There's so many decisions that I need to make, and there will be times when the tears will start coming. So I think when someone has a really good rapport with you, and you've taken
Hmm.
the time to be understanding, and not just throw out a bunch of charts and graphs and stats, and 1 out of 4 and 8 out of 10, and you
Sure.
know people don't care about that. They care more about, do you care? Are you listening to what I really want? And how can you help me?
Hmm. So they come in, a lot of people I imagine are going to be neophytes of sorts in terms of what is really available to them in this financial planning space. So from even just painting a relatively broad picture, we don't have to get into intimate details. What are some of the things that law firm owners could be learning about, could talk with a professional about that maybe they don't know to talk about just yet?
Well, today is April 15th.
It sure is as we record this.
Ironically, right?
Yeah.
Um, and nobody likes writing the check that they have to write today.
Hmm.
I don't know anybody. Yeah, you might be pleasantly surprised. Oh, geez, I didn't think it was going to be that number. I thought it was going to be higher. Or
Yeah.
I'm really disappointed that it's a lot higher than I thought it was going to be. It's the planning, right?
Yeah.
It's not a one time thing. Matter of fact, I did a post about it this morning briefly on LinkedIn. So, collaborating with your council of people to make sure that it's an ongoing thing. It's not just, here's all my stuff, right? Which is what a lot of people do. I mean, I talk to a lot of accountants and CPAs, and you get the stack of paperwork and they go through it, and then all of a sudden, well, here's your number. It has to be a lot more intuitive and a lot more congruent, where you're actually working towards a specific goal, working towards trying to minimize that check that you're going to write. And,
Mm.
there's a lot of different ways to do it. It's different for different people. It's different for different law firms based on, your income. It's based on your expenses. It's based on how many employees you have, if you have any. There's a lot of opportunity out there. The thing that I think that most law firm owners and even associates forget is you need to spend the time on it. And that's the biggest
Mm.
thing. Initially, it might sound like, oh, Frank needs all these documents and has to ask me all these questions. But once we get through
Yeah.
that, once we get through the first mountain, it becomes very simple at that point. And then it kind of moves in a nice, smooth progression. And it's not as cumbersome as a lot of people think, but you have to have the time for it. The other thing is cash flow. Got to manage your cash flow, especially if you're, personal injury attorney. That income can be up and down, can be all over the place, can be a large payout, and then all of a sudden there's nothing for a little while because you're working on a case that's very involved and is not ready to move to the finish line. So cash flow, I think, is very, very important as well. But it all really comes down to spending the time, talking to a professional, getting
Mm.
your questions answered, but having that comfortable feeling that, it's one thing to know, like, and trust somebody, right? But it's another thing to be able to have the confidence in the person you're talking to be able to get done what you need to have done.
You mentioned sort of there's that tax side of it all, there's the insurance side of it all, there's the estate planning side of it all. And there's this oftentimes an uncomfortable intersection of these where you may have multiple professionals pursuing what seem to be adjacent, almost similar goals. But I think one of the things that frustrates a lot of law firm owners is this feeling of, why isn't my team communicating with each other? Why doesn't it seem like there's an air of cooperation? How can a law firm owner who is starting to do some pretty significant wealth planning, maybe planning for replacement income, all that stuff, how can they, because as much as we would love all those individuals themselves to just automatically agree on it, right? That's sort of hoping and not really doing anything about it. We'd rather be
Yeah.
proactive. How can they enable that communication and cooperation from their team of people like you?
So that's a great question, and I take the approach from the offense standpoint, if you will. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm working with you, Charlie, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is you know what's your relationship with your accountant or CPA? And you'll tell me good, bad. Let's just say it's good. And I'm going to say, well, one of the things that I would like to do is collaborate with your accountant or CPA to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
we have you on the right track. Would you mind introducing me to him or to her? When it comes to estate planning, same thing, same conversation. When it comes to anything else that's financially related, I want to know who your other professionals are, who the other professionals in your relationship are, so that we can all collaborate. Because
Mm.
you're right, most of the time, there's 3 or 4 people involved, none of them are talking together. I
Yeah.
think it's up to the financial planner to be the quote unquote quarterback, for lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
um, to interact and generate those opportunities. And I think all of those other professionals will appreciate it, that you have an advisor or a planner that's willing to go out there and create and develop those relationships, because we have your best interest in mind. And that's, I think, what it really boils down to.
So if they don't have that type of quarterback on their team, is that something they should consider seeking out? Maybe even, and look, hopefully my financial planner doesn't listen to this podcast, because I will tell you I'm on the search for a new financial planner. Shh, we'll keep that hush hush over here.
Okay.
But like, because I'm going through that process, and I think there are going to be a lot of attorneys who at some point in their professional career got introduced to a financial planner, got connected with them, probably did, and look, I'm going to speak from my own experience, did the majority of whatever planning they were going to do like a decade ago and have hardly revisited it.
Yeah.
And for one reason or another, they're looking for someone who's going to be on offense for them.
Yeah.
What should they be
Yeah.
thinking about in going through that search?
It's finding the right fit. It's making sure that you have a conversation with a couple people that you believe in. And like I said, You got to know each other. You got to like each other. Because my viewpoint is we're going to be talking a lot. We're going to be having a lot of conversations. We're going to be emailing back and forth. We're going to be talking, multiple times throughout the year. If we're not getting along, you're not comfortable, I'm not comfortable. So you have to find, I think, the right personality fit. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier about having the confidence. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
confidence in the person, the team, to get done what you need to have done? And will they be proactive? So,
Mm.
like I said, I'm going to be proactive and ask you about your other professionals, and I want to meet them. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page so that we get the best outcome for you. We don't all have to agree on everything, but we at least
Mm-hmm.
need to be talking, because there's going to be things that, I'm not a CPA, so I don't know everything about tax law. I'm not an
Right.
estate planning attorney. I don't know everything about that, but I do know what I need to know to move the conversation along and make sure you get the items taken care of that you need to have taken care of, and put the people together in the same room. It doesn't happen often, but it should happen more than it needs, than it has been.
Yeah, the other thing I know, and I'll speak real quick on the estate planning side. It's interesting, and you were at the mastermind that I put on here
Yeah,
in the Northern Virginia region back in February. My gosh, it's been a while already.
I know. I was just
Uh,
thinking that today.
it's kind of wild, but I mentioned offhandedly, like one of the things that everyone in that room needs to know is that if you're working with law firms, there's kind of a fun little litmus test that I like to apply in terms of how well do you know the business structure or the intake structure even of law firms, which is a signing meeting means oftentimes something different in a personal injury firm that it does in an estate planning firm. If you say signing meeting in a personal injury firm, they and most of the world, they think of it as the sign up meeting when the client comes in, signs the documents to become a client. Whereas in the estate planning world, we have this interesting litmus test of a signing meeting. So when the client comes in to complete the documents. So there's the sign up meeting at the beginning and the signing meeting at the end.
Hmm.
So from that litmus test perspective, are there any types of just helpful litmus tests or questions that an attorney, law firm owner could ask their financial planner just to get a sense of like, does this person understand the full suite? You get what I'm going at.
Yeah, yeah. Do you work with other people like me? What are some of the things that you've seen that I need to be aware of? Today's April 15th. Man, this check is got an extra zero on there that I didn't want to write, or it's going in a digit higher than I thought. What can you
Yeah.
do to help me there? Are you on the pulse of what is happening in your space? Can I count on you to be there for me? I mean, we could go on and on and on, but I would not be afraid to ask a financial planner those kind of questions, and all the way to, why should I work with you?
Yeah.
What makes you different?
And within that scope, because I know that you're really focused on working with lawyers and law firm owners. Are there any and I understand that like you might be the one person who I bring on this show who has an even higher regulatory compliance level than the lawyers that I work with. So I understand, and for everyone listening, we're probably at times walking up to certain areas. And this, by the way, is why you need to go and have an actual conversation with someone like Frank, right?
Right, right.
You really do need to do it. But within that scope of what you can say here, what types of, I mean, in terms of, I don't know if we can go into coverage that someone should be investigating. And again, I'm using the word investigating because it's like, it's just a set of knowledge. So could you just speak to maybe what types of coverages are potentially available, or what types of, just within that range of questions? Because I have found that I finally learned, like, if it's at risk, you can insure it, is sort of like
Yeah,
the joke. You can insure almost anything. But
yeah.
I know that in having spoken to you, that there's definitely more to this than I certainly know and my clients know. Are there any spaces that should be investigated that are maybe under investigated by law firm owners?
Uh,
And
there's
if we have to send this over to compliance, we'll send it over to compliance.
well, just to kind of touch on a couple things, protecting your income, I think, is a tremendous um, item that is often overlooked. You may have protection from your, like if you work at a firm, you're a law firm owner, and you have a protection for your firm. There may be some things in that protection that you're not aware of that create a gap in your coverage. Okay,
Mm,
I can typically spot that relatively easily by just looking at your plan document. Um, what are you doing from a retirement planning standpoint? Well, we have a 401k. How much are you putting away? Well, I can only put away, 5% because of the testing and all that. I didn't
mm,
know that there's anything else I can do. Well, there are other things potentially that you can do. It just depends on a number of factors. The biggest thing uh, that we see people avoiding is planning for extended care. And
mm.
extended care has no age. It's not everybody who's 70 or 75 is going to have a long-term care event. That's not what we're talking about. Could
Right.
happen anytime. But that is the one thing that can ruin your retirement. So it makes sense to at least have the conversation. I have it
Yeah.
with everybody. It doesn't matter how old you are. We're going to at least talk about it. But
Hmm.
I come first and foremost from, managing the risk, minimizing what you're going to pay Uncle Sammy, and then let's get on to the fun stuff and let's plan for retirement and see what that looks
Yeah.
like. You know,
That whole risk profile is very interesting because you find a lot of lawyers, I would say the majority of them, have a degree of risk aversion, though I imagine that changes a bit when you get into the law firm owner space.
mm-hmm.
Uh, when you're usually doing these types of evaluations, how often are you spotting pretty obvious, like, oh, wow, this person is, what's the rate of underinsured versus too much exposure to overtaxation or just being overtaxed because they really aren't thinking critically about opportunities for themselves? How often are you quickly spotting those?
Without putting a percentage on it, I'm just going to say
Yeah,
a lot,
a
a
lot.
lot,
That's fair.
a
That's fair.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Now that doesn't mean that someone's way off. They
sure.
may be close. Maybe they overlooked something, or oh, geez, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. And that it helps when I can see what you're doing, look at your documents, your statements, your plans, and do a real evaluation so that I can tell you based on the planning tools that we use. Here are the loopholes. Here's where you're lacking. Here's where you're really strong, and we don't need to touch that, right?
Right.
But getting good information will determine the kind of output that we're going to provide for you and get you, either keep you on track or get you on track.
Have you ever encountered any spaces within insurance, financial planning, et cetera, where it can get to the point of the savings or value of it is less than, perhaps, depending on the size of someone's wealth, income, et cetera, is the work that has to go into generating that savings is, and the risk of potentially generating it is greater than the positive outcome that they will get from it?
I think you can run into that a lot for people.
Yeah.
Usually, it's not someone that's younger in their career or how do I want to say, you know, they're in the growth phase, right? They're
Yeah.
doing well. They're in the growth phase. I think where it can be somewhat challenging is you feel like you're in the twilight just because of your age. But man, I got a lot of catching up to do. How am I going to catch up?
Hmm.
And that I think relates to a couple things. It's, are you able to grow your business? Are you able to generate the income needed to do the things that we need to do? That's
Yeah.
probably where I would put someone in contact with you so that you can steer them in the right direction to get their business growing, to get them thinking about growing their business so that they can generate the dollars needed to do what they need to do. I mean, money is a tool.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a
Yeah.
tool for freedom to give you the choice, to give you the opportunity to do what it is that you want to do. But if you don't have the money, then you can't do any of the things that you need to do.
Now, Frank, you've made kind of a wild choice, not one that everyone would make, which is to put some focus. Now, you don't exclusively work with lawyers and law firm owners, but you've put a
No.
lot of focus on working with lawyers and law firm owners.
Yep.
Why that particular profession?
It just kind of happened. And I get this question often
I'm
lately.
sure.
Um, I think when I come back in real life, I'm going to be an attorney. I know everybody's going to tell me, oh, no, don't do that. Um, First off, I think the practice of law just intrigues me tremendously. Um, they have similar business operating dysfunctions like financial planners do. We all suffer from the same challenges, right?
Yeah.
Marketing, planning, cash flow, generating revenue, time. Do I have enough time to do what I need to do? But years ago, I was given what we call an orphan, for lack of a better word, which is someone who has a contract or an account with a company, but their advisor
Hmm.
left. And I went out on the meeting, met with this
Wow.
attorney, a family law attorney. It was kind of a little tough on me. All right, whatever. And I was kind of a little tough back. We gained a lot of respect for each other that way. I was introduced to another attorney. A friend of mine that I worked with took me on two different appointments with three other attorneys, because he kind of got the idea that I'm working with them. And
Hmm.
then where it really kind of happened is I was a member of a bar association a number of years ago, and my business partner and I went to a holiday party, and we were looking, where are we going to sit? And she picked this table of three attorneys, their partners, a couple of wives, and we sat down. And for like the next 3 hours, we had a great dinner. We had a great talk. That firm now is one of our best clients, our best friends. Not naming names. We're going to keep it all quiet.
Of
And then
course.
it just kind of developed from there. We started hanging out together. We started going to functions together. We're now in the same networking group together, and it just really grew from there. I mean, short and sweet is I like working with them, which is probably an anomaly for a lot of financial planners, but I do enjoy working with them because most of them do believe in the work that we do. They need the work that we do, and they want to work with someone to get that work done.
A pretty sound business plan if there ever was one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, it's a profession that, I always joke that I see because of how I entered this space through Ben Glass. I see really the best of it all. My perception of attorneys is incredibly positive. Even knowing that there are these negative stigmas attached to it is incredibly positive. I think it's a profession that really doesn't get its due and does need professionals like yourself who are thinking critically about some of the strange hinge points for attorneys, the transformational journey that they're going through, the entrepreneurship lifestyle that more and more law firm owners are building for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
having that stable team of professionals who get it when it comes to law firms is
Yep.
really important. So in this journey in working with lawyers, I'm curious, what are maybe a couple of the eccentricities that you encounter that you've had to adapt to, enjoy the most, have found the biggest opportunity for? What are a couple of those spaces?
The first thing that I had a challenge with was they love to read. Can you give me a copy of the contract? Can you give me a copy?
Ah,
And at first I'm like, oh, who reads this stuff? Well, you should read it. I mean, I read it, and then it would take a while for the next step to happen. And once I realized, well, wait a minute, you went to law school, and one of the big things you do in law is read and research. Okay, now I get it. I can take a step back and not feel as though you're dodging me or I have to pressure you, which I don't want to pressure anybody. If
right.
we like each other, we want to work together. Hey, that's great. So that was a big challenge for me. at the beginning. But once I got used to that, I think things just became a lot smoother. They're business minded,
Mm-hmm.
like myself. Uh, and they're the ones that I'm dealing with or working with, uh, they're all in growth mode. They want to get better, not only as an attorney, but as a person and as a business person, which similar to myself. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but I'm in growth mode. We're
Yeah.
open for business. We're looking for, you know, new opportunities. So I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon because I love what I do. And part of
Yeah.
that is, I got out of management last year or the beginning of this year, and I just want to do this, and I just want to be in front of people and network and collaborate. And I do believe that we can lead you on the right path.
Speaking of, if people who are interested in contacting you, connecting with you, sort of one, where can we send them? But also for folks who are maybe interested in like really working with you, is there a geographic limit to where you work, or how does that function?
So, great question. Fortunately, I can be licensed anywhere. So,
Hmm.
I'm currently in about 22 different states. Um, there's a small handful of people that I've never even seen face to face, and we've worked together. But had great phone conversations, and that's all that they need. But yeah, we can
Mm-hmm.
work anywhere. The beauty of virtual working is great. Um, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day. 8:19 sharp usually is when I post, um, and that includes Saturday and Sunday, and that's really the best place to find me. My contact information is in there in my profile, including my phone number, and I'm always willing to talk to someone. You want to bounce an idea, you have someone that you feel needs to talk to me. I'm here as a resource, and I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy talking to people about what it is that I do.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that having spent some time getting to know you, spending the day with you, and some other friends of ours, that you were able to very quickly shine a bright light on gaps that I know exist for several people. And so I would recommend that folks reach out to you, contact you, find an opportunity to talk with you. Because this stuff, there's just a lot of unknowns, right? It's the exact same thing as when a client enters the world of legal. There's a lot of unknowns. They
Hmm.
need
Hmm.
someone who's going to break it down in a way that you can comprehend. And then also that person being a strong advocate for a path, because I think that's really valuable, is like, hey, here is a strong path that we can go down, and then mashing that with the values of the actual client. So I think that's something you do a good job of, Frank. So last question for you. It's the three-parter, which is, what are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
um, I'm reading the book that you recommended about the hospitality, and I also read
Unreasonable
the
Hospitality. It's
yes,
very
great
good.
great book, and the book that you gave us at what we've decided to call the law firm Avengers meeting.
That's right.
Went through that book, very very good, and I love to read, and I got to have it in my hand. I'm not good with Kindle or anything like that, so
Me too.
I got to have it in my hand. What am I watching? I'm watching Suits again. Sorry.
There you go. Hey, everyone's got their comfort food shows.
Yeah, Harvey's my hero. So what can I tell you?
That's awesome.
What am I listening to as far as podcast?
Podcast, music, whatever's in your ears.
Um, I always listen to your podcast. Um,
Appreciate it.
I listen to it's by Brendan Fraser, Human Side of Advice,
Hmm.
uh, Billion Dollar Backstory by Stacey Havener. Really, really good, really, really good podcast. There's a bunch of others, but those are the couple that come to mind. And then music wise, I'm all Springsteen every day. All about the boss.
All right. I know a couple of folks who would very much appreciate you shouting him out. That's perfect. Well,
Yep.
Frank, my friend, I appreciate your time, your wisdom, and I mean it, folks. If you're listening to this and you haven't talked with your existing financial advisor in a long time, you haven't talked with a financial planner advisor, either you need to rekindle that relationship, reach out to a person like Frank, have that discussion, because your circumstances now may be vastly different than they were in the past, and you need a refreshed look at all of it. It's It will both terrify you and put your mind at ease at the same time.
Exactly. That's a great way to put that.
So, Frank, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Charlie, for having me. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can do it again.
Absolutely. And we will see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.